Welcome to the Nightly 5 podcast with Ben O'Shea.
A new group of COVID-19 variants is sweeping across the country. The new variants, nicknamed FLiRT, are the new dominant strains in the U.S., according to the CDC.
For most of this year, the JN1 variant of the coronavirus accounted for an overwhelming majority of COVID-19 cases. But now an offshoot variant called KP2 is taking off. It made up just 1% of cases in the US in mid-March, but now it makes up more than a quarter of cases in the States and has also recently been detected in Australia. It belongs to a subset of COVID variants that scientists have cheekily nicknamed FLiRT. Who said epidemiologists don't know how to have fun? Well, I've got one on the phone with me now, Head of Epidemiological Modelling at Monash University, Professor James Trower. James, welcome back to the show.
Thanks, Ben.
Okay, so let's start with the obvious one. What's the deal with the name FLiRT for this group of variants?
Yeah, we usually, epidemiologists tend to like scary things like Kraken and, I don't know.
Even
monsters.
Omicron sounded like it was a long-lost Decepticon from the Transformers universe.
Oh, that's right, yeah. And then we sort of gave up on Greek letters for some reason. I don't know why we got bored of them, but yeah, I like Twitter. It seems to be Twitter rather than epidemiologists that's naming them these days. I don't know we get much of a say in it anymore.
That fills me with confidence. And so FLiRT, right, is sort of an acronym for the different variants that make up this subset?
Oh, it's an acronym for a couple of substitutions of, I think, amino acids within the spike protein. And I mean, the spike protein is usually where the virus mutates enough that it can, you get sort of a significant difference to the key that goes into the lock in the human cell. So I don't know why they decided to name that one this way, but all of the previous variants have those sort of changes, and this one has a couple of changes that begin with FLiRT.
Yeah, right. And so it seems to be on the rise in America. What do we know about this subset of variants compared to past variants?
It's following the pattern to some degree of what we've seen with Omicron, in that there is no immediate reason to be particularly alarmed that it's going to cause more severe disease. It seems to have a little bit of a transmission advantage over the previous Omicron subvariants. All of these ones are still just Omicron. Since Omicron first emerged, we've basically only seen Omicron variants. And so it does have the potential to cause maybe a bit of a bigger epidemic over our winter. But, I guess we were probably expecting a bit of a winter epidemic with COVID anyway, and I don't think it will have a huge impact.
And so in terms of vaccine efficacy, they updated the major vaccines to have some protection against Omicron. Would you expect that to still be valid in terms of this new FLiRT variants?
Yeah, and then even within Omicron, we've been sort of chasing the particular type of Omicron. And so I guess the most recent vaccines that we have are as good as any, but it is like the virus is sort of mutating away from the exact sort. Like we're trying to target, in any given month, we're sort of like the vaccine developers are trying to target the type of Omicron that's around, but then the virus mutates away from the vaccine within a few months, and we haven't got exactly as good a match. But I think basically the vaccines that are around at the moment should provide a pretty good level of protection.
And generally speaking, it's the sort of thing that you should consider get the jab if you're in one of those high-risk cohorts.
That's right. And I mean, the wording that Atagi gives out is, I guess, not super specific. It talks about recommended and available, and if you're aged over 65 and if you've got significant immune compromise, then they're sort of leaning towards the recommended wording. But I think absolutely for those older groups, particularly for the over 75s, also for the over 65s, and for people with significant immune compromised conditions and other conditions that put them at risk, I think those people really should be looking at a vaccine now, because we're heading into winter with a new variant, so likely to be a significant epidemic.
And on the topic of vaccines, AstraZeneca, of course, pulled its COVID vaccine recently. It was a blast from the past. I had all my old mates in the anti-vaxxer community blowing up my inbox. I hadn't heard from some of them in months. Now, I'm just curious what your take on it, because the anti-vaxxers obviously look at it as a win for them, the proof that the vaccine was dangerous all along. I got the sense that it was just a risk-benefit kind of situation.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the situation's changed a lot, and now the benefits to the individual by getting vaccinated are not as huge as they were because so many people do have some immunity. So you're sort of topping up the immunity rather than what we were doing when we were rolling out the vaccines in 2021 was, we were just trying to generate population immunity from scratch to protect the whole of the population against this potentially enormous epidemic that was going to be associated with a huge loss of life if we didn't get people vaccinated. So we really rolled out very aggressively at that time and put in place some recommendations and requirements that people had to adhere to get vaccinated. It's now very different. I guess we're now not trying to protect the whole population. We're not trying to modify the epidemic. We're not trying to sort of like turn it around and get it to head back down again through vaccination. So it's an individual risk-benefit analysis, and when the risk of one vaccine is higher than another, why wouldn't you use the safer vaccine? So those are some of the considerations now, I think.
Yeah, I think that's pretty good advice. I think the danger of hindsight is you go, oh, well, something was unnecessary. But I think the fact that most of us are still walking around today is evidence that some decisions were made during the pandemic that actually were the right ones. And don't second guess it in hindsight. Head of Epidemiological Modelling at Monash University, Professor James Trower. Always great to have you on the show sharing your insights.
Brilliant. Thanks, Ben.